Hi, my name is Benedict. This is vaguely related to the last video about Dorville being acting like a crazy religious toxic cult. In that I spoke about this as one of the examples of how we see this coming through. This is specifically about the idea, the fantasy idea that has developed that headphones are in some way equal to or even better than loudspeakers in a room. And if people knew their basics, they would know that this is fundamentally really unsound. There are reasons why headphones seem attractive, because as we see, they give a very false view of the audio world, and that is appealing and also arresting. So there's an adrenaline in this because it's a little odd. It's like how we can see perhaps a beautiful alien at the same time as her seeming a little frightening. She's attractive, so we get an exaggerated sense of our reaction from the adrenaline. Take that adrenaline away, then our reaction to the female alien, while not necessarily significantly different, would be different. And we need to be aware of these differences. Just because something is different and exotic does not make it better in terms of being able to reference and make decisions. The adrenaline rush of exotic can be the absolute enemy, just as the adrenaline rush of it being half a dB louder is a wonderful way of selling sound goodifiers to suckers. So what we're doing is we're looking at the cold hard reality, but mixing is an art form. While there is a lot of technicality and therefore sciencey stuff in it, the reality is it is an art form. So like psychology compared to anatomy, there is a lot of softness in it. And while people have a problem with this concept of softness, this is where the art comes in mixing. This is why we could give the same song. Let's give Joan Jett's I Love Rock and Roll to 4 different good mix engineers. We're going to get 4 different visions of that song, especially if they don't know the song already. If, like me, they already know and love the song, then it's entirely possible part of them is going to be dragged towards replicating the feel. But even there, they're going to replicate the feel of when they first heard and fell in love with that song, in which case it could colour it. So we might even find that maybe Andrew Shepp's version of the song might sound a little bit like it comes from a transistor radio, and then we track back into it and we find that when he first heard the song and was really got a excitement over it, that he was listening on his little blue transistor radio with a 2-inch paper cone, in which case that feel comes out in his version of how he mixes the song. Mixing is a soft thing, it's an art form, so where we look at this, if we try to approach it as, then we're never going to understand it and we're not suited to mixing. I have come with some props. Mixing is about balance. It is not about exclusivity, and this is a really important thing that we've got to get. If we think that mixing is about exclusivity and technical perfection rather than a broader balance that translates anywhere, then we're done for. It is really important that we have to always understand that mixing is about feel. We're mixing to generate a feel. We are not ever mixing to generate a certain frequency, something or other. I hear lots of mixes where that is the aim, and it is brutally obvious because it's boring as well, a thing that's really boring. So let's start with a picture. This is a representation of us sitting in a near field setting. So in other words, we've got our NS10s in front of us, and they are relatively close, within a metre or so of our flappy ear holes. As we make sound comes out of them, and it propagates. It propagates through the air. Understanding this concept of air is really important. I'm not talking about air exactly as the 4K frequency or whatever it is that's on some faux analog EQ. The reality is there is air, there's a gap between here and there, and a lot of stuff happens. A lot of stuff happens in that. If we were to get super technical, which I don't encourage, we could probably work out how that sound is modified and, well, let's say degraded between the cone of our NS10 and our flappy ear hole. If it's a more humid day, then there's more droplets of water floating around, so those bits of sound are bouncing off and probably being fragmented by those water drops. Probably not technically true, but nonetheless it will change what's happening. So this idea that we've got this perfect baseline is unmitigated BS. But because people believe it as a fundamental truth, then everything after that is just, it's a whack jam. So we've got our sound being propagated with our lovely retrowave coloured D shapes. As we see, they actually propagate across the whole room. So the sound is going, the left-hand speaker is going obviously to the left ear, that's my right hand, and vice versa. But they're also crossing over. So we're hearing a bit of sound from each side. And this is good and natural because it's how it works in the real world. If I had Tigger on my side going, "Grr, I'm going to eat you," I can work out where Tigger is from the fact that my brain triangulates. And you might go, well, what's Tigger got to do with this? Because when we listen to rock and roll, it's nothing to do with being eaten. Well, you're using the same brain as you would be when standing in the middle of the Masai Mara and trying to work out where Tigger is before he jumps on you and eats your guts for lunch. So we react using exactly the same hardware, software, soup, whatever. So we get what's called crossover. So Tigger goes, "Grr, I'm going to eat you." I'm hearing not only Tigger directly, well, let's get him a little closer, uncomfortably, but I'm also hearing sound bounce off whatever is in the environment. I'm hearing it bounce off antelopes over there, I'm hearing it bounce off zebras over there, I'm hearing it bounce off grass over here, and Kilimanjaro over there. Not to mention the rains in Africa, which are, of course, being blessed. All that information comes and the brain puts it together, and that can triangulate exactly where Tigger is. So I can turn very directly and go, "No, Tigger, not today." This is how the brain works. So this concept, while it's a simplification of having a pair of NS10s in front of us pointing at our flappy ear holes, what happens is a great analogue, as in a great representation of us standing on the Masai Mara wondering if Tigger's going to eat us or if we're going to eat a zebra today. We've got crosstalk, but we've got more than that. As I said, when I hear Tigger, I'm also hearing bounces of Tigger from everything that's in the environment. And if you look here carefully, you will see that this room, it's kind of white in the middle, which represents the lovely NS10 speaker cone. So that's speaker sound. But around the outside, it's pink. Pink is the sound that's coming out of those speakers. So we've got bounce from the room. Now, many of you poor deluded people are going to say that is terrible and that we can't mix with any kind of bounce, that all sound needs to be perfect and it's Tigger in an anechoic chamber. But that's not how the real world works. If we mix that way, that every sound is isolated, then we're going to make mixes that are weird. Because the reality is the room that we mix in, the environment that we mix in, someone's going to say just room, the environment, everything, is going to affect our mix. If this room were in some way for me physically uncomfortable, like it's way too hot right now, I am sweating and I've still got the fan on and what have you, I'm not going to mix super well right now because it's uncomfortable. If I had flashing lights and the walls were painted black and white or purple swirly colours and what have you, while someone could walk in and go, "Cool man, wow, such an amazing studio with your glowing neon," it's going to be an uncomfortable environment to work in. It's going to be distracting as, well, something very distracting. So we need bounce to match the real world. The bounce coming from this room gives me a sense of what the bounce is going to be like when somebody's listening in a room, any room, which is also adequate for the sense of what the bounce is going to be like if they're in their car. Now, before some gubbins comes up and goes, oh, but people only ever listen to their music on iPods, man, so you should mix on iPods because, it's the only way. Well, I would sort of say, gubbins, you're probably not suited to this. Now, probably I'm not supposed to insult people, but I'm tired of being insulted by gubbinses. The reality is that most people listen to music, maybe not on as nice a stereo as one might hope. It's not like most people have a Marantz, but guess what? Back in the 80s, most people didn't have a Marantz either. So it's entirely possible that people are going to be listening to your music on this. But that does not mean that you should mix on this. Because if you mix on this so it only ever sounds good on this, what happens if somebody's got the one that's half the size of this? They're screwed. What happens for someone like me who's got a set of Yamos? I'm screwed. But you know who's really screwed? You are. Because you didn't consider the real world. So the whole idea of setting up a studio that looks roughly like my picture here is that you do get all of these real world elements that essentially match as an analogue for me standing on the Masai Mara working out where Tigger is, where zebras are, and of course where the rains are in Africa and Kilimanjaro, because it's the Serengeti and I forget the order of the words, but it's got to feel real world. And note it's feel. All of this literal stuff about sound, this and that frequency, it is a false baseline out of which you will build nothing but fantasies. So that's what a speaker is. It's a wonderful analogue of the real world. By getting ourselves into the near field, as you see in the picture, we've got fairly neutral here, and that focuses the speakers. But we're still just aware enough of the real world to get a sense of how it's going to translate. That is what it should be. And it's not about saying the speakers must be like 47 centimetres over there and unilateral triangles and all that kind of BS. There are better ways of working that out. Get, if you want to try, then get this book, which is called Mixing with Your Mind. That has a process for setting up speakers. It is wonderfully odd, but it works. But I don't necessarily even think of it that way. I have my own way of going, this is comfortable. We will talk about getting comfortable later. So enter the headphone. We bring in headphones. Now, headphones, in terms of musical audio engineering, etc., were not designed to replace speakers. They were designed to give us the ability to isolate detail in ways that are harder in speakers. So if there's a little click somewhere, I can put on my cans and they give me a different environment as well as a separation from my environment, so I can't hear the person eating chips next to me, like crunch, crunch, crunch with their salt and vinegar chips, crisps. And allows me to go, okay, I can hear that and deal with it, assuming it really needs dealing with, but anyway, deal with it, take the headphones off, go back to speakers like a sane human being. The problem we have with headphones is what makes them seem amazing to start with, is that they're completely binaural. As in, we're not hearing one world, we're hearing two completely separate worlds. We're splitting our hemispheres. You can see that in the picture that I've got the blue world, which has no connection to the outside world. And while that is a very attractive thing about speakers, especially if you're a teenager, you can put yourself in a world completely divorced from mum and dad, your annoying sister, and, Satan the headmaster and all that kind of stuff, and feel like you are the master of I don't know, Middle Earth or the school and the wall, because we don't need no education, we don't need no thought control, no dark sarcasm in our teenageriness. We can put ourselves in this bubble. But remember, when we're mixing, we don't want to be in a bubble. It's the worst place to be, because we need to analogue between us standing on the Masai Mara and Tigger trying to eat us and the music that we're putting together. When we work in headphones, we are separated from reality. We're also, as I said, completely binaural. So that means that all the stuff that's coming from the left hand, because that's what you're seeing, speaker, which is not the same as an actual loudspeaker, they're a different design in here, is being injected directly into my head. There's like probably this much air gap. You can see it, like this much air gap between the driver here and my ear hardware. So there's no space for this to propagate through air and do normal air things. So we're direct injecting sound on this side, and we're direct injecting sound on this side, and there is no crossover. That's weird. Yes, there's an adrenaline rush out of that weirdness. When you hear it, it's like, it's amazing. It's like it's so pin-sharp defined, and oh, it's so much better. Yes, that's good for hearing very specific things that are problematic. But it's problematic on its own because you've broken the way that hearing works in the real world. So you've gotten not only a separated binaural signal, which is not like the way the world works, but you've also separated yourself from the environment, which means that when you mix, you've got no sense of your environment, because there is none, and your mix is going to feel environmentless. It's going to lack depth, it's going to lack relevance to the environment that it's in. And you might go, well, that doesn't matter, because when it comes out of their ooey boom into their lounge room, then their lounge room walls are going to create the bounce that turns it into great music. Well, you know what? Not really. The reason that people like analog synths rather than digital synths is simply because there's a lot of stuff rolled into analog synths that hasn't been rolled into a lot of digital synths. You roll it into digital synths, then the digital synth beats the analog synth hands down because they sound exactly the same, except you can hit the save button, go away, come back 6 months later, and it's there on your screen, just like it ever was. Good luck with your Model D. So the thing is, we can get close enough, but we've got to do the work. Now, headphones are unnatural, so we make unnatural sounding mixes in them. And then we think that somehow they're going to sound natural. And again, there's the nubbins with the idea that, I think it was a Gubbins, sorry, I changed your identity for you. It was very super unwoke of me. Gubbins says, but, everybody listens to music in iPods. I don't own iPods, so Gubbins, don't you talk for me. But the reality is, well-mixed music sounds okay in headphones. It actually sort of sounds good because we hear that environment that has been created more dramatically. I don't want to say better. But if it's been mixed without an environment, we're just going to hear that lack of environment even worse. It's going to be creepier, scratchier. If when listening on my speakers here, in a near-field situation, it feels uncomfortable because it's like it's a yucky mix because there's no environment in it. It's going to sound like it's just scratching on my little ear holes. It's going to sound really uncomfortable. But more importantly, it's going to feel uncomfortable. That's the problem. I shouldn't say the word sound. It's going to feel uncomfortable because it's not actually doing anything different to my ears. It's just going to feel to me uncomfortable because there's no environment, because there was no environment when it was being mixed. So this idea is really, really flawed that headphones are the same or better because they're magically getting rid of rooms. Which brings me, of course, to but you just treat your room, you put some wall padding in, and you do this, that, and the other, and I'm just like, bollocks. Bollocks to you. The reality is that most of the great records, Motown, James Brown, all of this amazing stuff, most of that was actually mixed in rooms that most of you would piss on. Because you'd be like, yeah, but it's not proper. And they didn't know, or they didn't care, and they were right. Because the reality is, they were mixing for the feel, and the feel of those records, while they don't have a perfect flat 2020 response based on our modern expectations, the feel of them is just like, oh my God, James Brown, James Brown, James Brown. I mean, it's a bit silly when you first hear it, but James Brown, James Brown. There is an energy that comes out of those records, despite all the supposed technical problems, which we don't hear come out of these modern, perfectified rooms with wall padding and all kinds of stupidity. So again, if your bass line is broken, everything you do after that has to be broken. So we want to be mixing in speakers. Now, again, some Gubbins squared is going to come along and say, but, well, you can just use something or other X headphones. Now, I was actually offered the opportunity to review them for higher hertz, and they would have been sent over to me somehow from somewhere, and I declined. I was already aware of them and of a few of their competitors, but I read the guff on the official site and was just like, really? Really? They're speaking to me as though I am an idiot. They're speaking to me as though I don't know anything about my craft, and yet they're suggesting that their idea is more pro. Okay, they might make more money than me, so in that sense you can say, well, they're more professional than me because they make more money, but there's no degree of professionalism based in money. If you look in the dictionary, you earn your money at this. It doesn't matter whether you earn $1 a year or $1 a picosecond. You are equally professional under that metric, but they're fiddling with the metric, again changing the baseline. All I saw was hype and magic, secret herbs and spices, and quite a few things which actually break the reality of how things work. So I said, no, I'm not going to touch these. But from looking at reviews, and I have looked at quite a few because I was interested in these things when I first started hearing them, it was like, oh, well, that's different. I should have some sense of what they are. And I kind of quickly worked out what they must be, because there is no new technology. You know, it's not like somebody just invented time travel or something that's so new that something different can be done. Sound is sound is sound, and digital ones is one and a zero is a zero. There's no different quality ones and zeros. Therefore, it's just an application of existing science, existing technology. Therefore, we can reverse engineer it relatively easily if we apply a couple of brain cells to it. So I said no, and the reviews, when I've looked at them, ultimately it just seems to me that it's a pair of $15 headphones with some $5 software for $300. And what's worse, I wouldn't care if I thought that was actually going to do a good job for people. Worse, it's $15 headphones, $5 software, and minus an infinite amount of money, dollars, worth of false expectations and false premises. So it's like, dude, you're asking me to give you $300 for minus so many $50,000 or $100,000 worth of goodwill, in the sense of fibbery. So it's a really super bad plan, because it's not going to work out. What we need to do is to work out, how do we move forward? Now, I've spoken quite a bit about the brain. We need to talk about the brain more. I know people don't want to, but, well, that's your fault if you don't want to learn the basics of your craft, because that makes you a sucker for any fool selling snake oil. So the brain adjusts. The brain is a wonderful adjusting system. If you want to know more about it, although it's a far more physical sort of thing, then you can go read Norman Doidge, the Plastic Brain, or something like that. You can take a spoon and spoon out somebody's brain and glue back over it, and given time, that person will become, if not exactly the same functional, they will become surprisingly functional again. I know I'm very much simplifying this, but the reality is the brain is a big adjusting machine. So I'm not suggesting that you scoop out part of your brain, although if you keep following the common material that is built on fibs, then you might as well scoop some of your brain out and throw it down the sink. So the thing is, if you have some music, let's say we've got some great music, let's say we've got some Black Sabbath, and it's nicely recorded Black Sabbath, because all Black Sabbath is. I'm not a fan of Ozzy's voice. But let's say we've got some Black Sabbath and we're listening to it on this, which is naturally a pretty limited system. It's not a Marantz, I can tell you that. Over time, we will actually learn to adjust to this. And it doesn't take an awful lot of time, especially if we're digging the Black Sabbath that we are grooving to. As we become more emotionally invested in the music that we're listening to, and we're waving our upside down cross and biting heads off chickens and stuff like that, as we are feeling the Sabbath, we actually stop hearing how bad this is and start feeling how good Sabbath is. Because what's happening is our brain is actually taking the rather limited and ghastly frequency curve of this and normalizing it. So you can think of that if I drew a picture of a ugly frequency curve that's limited and wouldn't want to listen to that, and drew a perfect frequency curve and then morphed between the two of them. You should be able to do that in your head. You should be able to think of that. If you can't, if you need me to draw it for you, then I'm sorry, but maybe you should give up trying to be a mix engineer. You should be able to, in your head, get that sense of yucky line turning into a nice line. This is what the brain does. It's able to take Black Sabbath on this horrible sounding thing and have it come out as though it's much better, because we're focusing on the feeling and the brain adjusts. This is a really important thing to know. Now, before, Gubbins, you say, oh, but you'll just adjust to headphones. Well, you kind of can, but you kind of can't. You would do better to learn to adjust in the real world. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. This is what's called referencing. Referencing is where you actually get to learn how sound works. And it's not a case of reading textbooks going, oh, well, 1K falls off at... I don't care, that's BS. That's fine for, I don't know, an audiologist or whatever, someone who studies sound as a scientific thing. But that's not the work of a mix engineer. A painter doesn't need to know the chemical constitution of his paint. He absolutely doesn't. He doesn't even need to know which rock it came out of. I mean, if he's chasing it for himself, yes, maybe he needs to know what the rocks look like so he doesn't crack open random rocks when he's looking for blue rocks. The thing is, a painter just needs to know how the colour feels and how when he puts colours together, either mushing them up into a new colour or next to each other, how they feel. And a sound engineer is exactly the same. So a sound engineer who spends too much time trying to know too much literally in a sciencey way about sound can often do more damage than good, especially if they transform when they're working to going, oh, well, that's that, and that does this, and it's like they're no longer following the scene and story of the song. So we reference, and the best way to reference is, you guessed it, getting the gear that you have got. And I don't mean shitty speakers, but getting the gear that you have got, whatever that is. I'd turn the camera around and show you my Yamos, but no one's going to care because it's irrelevant. But you get the gear you've got, you put on Black Sabbath. Well, maybe not Black Sabbath, but the equivalent of something that matters to you. James Brown, or Duran Duran. Bop, 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 bop. You put on things that matter to you. Music that you're passionate about for the story, not just like, oh, well, that's got the most amazing 1K frequency response. That's BS. You don't love that music. You're just using music for your obsession with 1K. So you find music that you're emotionally engaged with really, really strongly, and you listen to it. And you learn how it feels within your environment. I listen to music here. So I will put on Sabbath and James Brown and Duran Duran and Steely Dan and Alan Parsons' Eye in the Sky. I was going to stop waving this at you. And so I know how this feels in this world. Remember here in this picture, we've got ourselves on the Masai Mara. We're in the real world. So I'm in the Masai Mara hearing Alan Parsons. And that gives me a reference for feeling. That's reference. There are a lot of dangers with referencing because, again, a lot of people are working with a broken bass line. So the common term referencing has been turned into a put song X that you think is blammin' into the top of your door, and then A-B between song X and your song, constantly nitpicking and going, well, song X has got a little bit more 3.475K, so I'll just push mine up a little bit to make them exactly the same, or being a lazy toad and getting a piece of software that goes through and magically works out what the frequency plot of song X is, and then just forces that over the top of yours. Guess what? I've tried them, and I can tell you that the best song ever, Alan Parsons' Eye in the Sky, taking the profile, putting it on top of one of my songs, does not turn it into Alan Parsons, let alone Eye in the Sky. It just makes my stuff sound weird. If I want to buy into the fantasy, that's my business, but it's not anything but a fantasy. So A-being flipping from one song to another, or even worse, stealing profiles, is not the way it works. There are times where I've done mixes. I did a mix for Jake Cropley on one of his older EPs, and one of the songs I'm listening to it and I'm sort of thinking, yeah, this kind of, it's got some feel of a mid-80s Cure kind of thing. I wanted to impart that on it because I thought it was going to work really, really nicely for it. So I just wanted to refresh in my mind how that felt. I didn't go to a Cure record. I actually went to a Cure concert because I'd watched a Cure concert not so long before, which was a really nice one because sometimes Robert's just not really in the room, and Robert was on, and it was a good show and it sounded wonderful. It had this great feel, more to the point. I need to stop saying sounded. It felt wonderful. So I pulled up YouTube, spent some time just immersing myself in it, feeling it, and then went to work. There were a few times where I sort of thought, yeah, okay, how was that element in the Cure show? How did that element sit in the mix? And I'd go back and I'd just listen again, focusing in on, the or whatever, and come back. But there was no A-being whatsoever. I just immersed myself in the Cure for a little bit, and then came back and said, okay, how can I get what I like about that, the feeling, and have Jake's thing work like that? Not a case of forcing it on top. Here's Jake's lovely folk song, and I'm saying, oh no, you've got to sound like Metallica. Not at all. That is completely, completely wrong, even though we might say, oh, but, I'm going to copy Metallica onto my death metal record. Like, no, it's not the way it works. It's merely a case of understanding how music feels, and then being able to borrow from that to apply it to your situation. So A-being, do not A-B songs. The other one is speakers. And good old Bob Katz says use one speaker, nothing else. He's quite speak to the hand about this, and he is right, because this is the way that I was raised. You don't have thousands of speakers. It might look cool to have thousands of speakers, and there are certain advantages, but if you have one speaker and you listen to everything on that, that is the world. When you're a tribesman on the Masai Mara, being chased by Tigger and trying to chase antelopes, how many of you are there? There's one. How many Masai Mara are there? How many worlds do you live in? One. You don't get to flip out of your world every couple of seconds to just go, oh, now I want to be in Antarctica. Oh, now I want to be in Japan. Oh, no, that's not the Japan I want. I want the Japan of 1275. That's weird. It doesn't reflect reality. So constantly flipping between speakers is a really bad plan. By all means, get out there, and when you've finished your mix and you're comfortable with it in your environment, if you're not comfortable with it, don't take it out. That's it. If you've got no idea if your mix works, fix that. That might mean fixing some of your emotional issues, but fix that before you take it outside. And then, after your session, take it outside, watch some TV, and then maybe pop it on the same system you've been using to watch your TV. I do that. As I've got an album that's got enough material, or definitely at the point where it's like, oh yeah, that's becoming an album, I'll take it up and I'll put it on as I hop into bed and I'm reading my book, and I've got my music coming towards me. Not only is it a different speaker, but it's a whole different environment. If it translates, if the story is coming out right, it's working. I am not sitting there putting my head to the speakers going, oh no, the frequency at here is like 0.7 of a dB less, and it's like, that's messed up. That's not referencing, that's just being an anal dill. So, we've spoken about this already. We must not confuse sound with feel. As mix engineers, we're artists. We are masters of feel. We paint with sound. So where we say, this sounds this way, we really should be saying this feels this way. Because what we're saying is, this sounds to me this way. There's a cool bit in the Mark Wahlberg movie Rockstar, where he walks into the studio and they're working on something or other, and the band leader, guitarist, is saying to the bass player, it doesn't sound very brutal, can you make it more brutal? And the bass player goes, sounds pretty brutal in here, man. And they go on the desk, maybe it's an EQ thing. The thing is, it's feel. That's all it is, it's feel. Our job is to create feel in the way that's going to translate. It's not to say, it needs to sound exactly like this. That's not mix engineering, that's just, I don't know what that is, but it's not mix engineering. So the biggest problem that we face here from a lack of these is a lack of experience. Now, obviously experience just comes with time. But people try to fool themselves that they can buy technology that will overcome their lack of experience. No, it just digs a deeper hole. You're more confused than you were before. Experience comes with time, but experience comes from doing the right things. So if you reference the way that I say, grab your existing kit and put on Black Sabbath and Alan Parsons and put on great music. I don't encourage listening to only one subgenre because you believe that's great. You like it, that's fine. But I don't, as a general rule, use Front 242 as a reference track. I use Alan Parsons and Pink Floyd as reference tracks, even Duran Duran to some extent as a reference track. But I don't use Front 242, simply because they're too left field. And you can go, but I only mix EBM, so because I only do industrial, then Front 242 is the most relevant thing. And I'm going to go, nah, probably not. I would rather see you listening to the Eagles, or Pink Floyd, or Alan Parsons. But I'd rather see you listening to the Eagles because it's amazing music that's really well mixed. So that way you're going to feel it. And when you get to the point where you're really feeling, welcome to the Hotel California, and it's becoming real for you, as in you feel it right inside you. You've got to know this. If you don't know it, then you don't know what I'm talking about. But until you get to that point, and I don't mean bobbing your head like, oh, look how cool I am because I'm, on YouTube, and that's proving what an amazing musical person, what a producer I am. That's showing off. That's not feeling music. When you get to that point where it's alive inside you, just like you were standing on the Masai Mara, and there's Tigger, and there's Antelope, and there's Kilimanjaro rising like something above the Serengeti, then you are feeling the music, and that's your reference. And then you can go off and make, double heptastic quad-core, death metal or whatever, some obscure subgenre, because you've got the feeling for how music works within your environment. So you can build your experience by having a proper bass line, but if your bass line is broken, everything you do after that is broken, and the breaking compounds. I talk about that in the last video. All right, now there are ways that people use to try to fake this. I was talking about that before, and I probably shouldn't have talked about it, but it belongs here. So what happens is that people come up with this cunning plan. It's a cunning plan because it's a cunning way to sell those who haven't done their basics something they don't need, and as I suggested, even worse, has negative value. So $15 headphones with $5 software and a minus $50,000 worth of productivity. I hope you understand what I'm saying there, is that you're buying negative value. Here's something I created earlier. Here's a sound. At the moment, it's coming out your speakers. I hope you're not listening to this in headphones, although there are points where it will be advantageous to you, but you should be able to at least basically feel what I'm saying. Wonderful. That's what we've got. So what happens is they do crosstalk. So remember, in our picture here, we've got some of the right NS10 appearing in the left ear and vice versa. They cross over. That's crosstalk. It's really simple. So you can hear the bounce here. Left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. If I press this little button, you should now notice that it's narrowed in a little bit. If you're sitting in front of proper speakers, you will just subtly feel that that's tightened up. It may feel a little less exciting. If you are in cans, it will have stopped having that two separate worlds feel, and now it will feel this rather than this. So straight away, it feels a little bit more natural. Now, the way that this is achieved is stupidly simple. So you don't need anything else. So the fact that they're saying to you, you need to this, that, and the other, is pretty stupid. So the way that this is done is I took, and any DAW can do this, or almost any DAW can do this, I took the signal from my chain, my master, fed it to an audio splitter. You need to know how to do this in your DAW, that's your business. I've taken the standard signal, left goes to left, right goes to right. I've then taken a copy of that, left goes to right, right goes to left. So I've just crossed them over. Just what we were listening to before. Backwards. It's ping pong rather than ping pong. Now what happens when I put them in the middle, 50%, guess what, it's perfect mono. But, because we've got 100% crosstalk, if I move these to a small amount, the sound narrows down a little because each ear in the headphone is actually hearing both. So we are generating the disappears. We have not generated the room bounces. That is going to be more complex. But, and I haven't tried it because I'm not going to waste my time with it, there is absolutely nothing to stop me from taking this signal, putting a little reverb in, and feeding that in as well. So that's all they're essentially doing to solve the binaural problem. It's possible it's as little as this, just putting a little switch in, little mixer with crossed wires, balancing between original and crossed wire signals, and you're getting a cross-talked, narrower signal that feels a little bit more realistic in headphones. It's easier to get a sense of what's going on. That's it. It's really stupidly simple. The other thing that these things tend to do is to offer you, a million rooms. But as we've already established, the idea of a million rooms is probably unwise. How many rooms do we need? One, because there's only one Masai Mara that we're wandering around on, avoiding tigers and chasing zebras. And blessing rains. There's only one. Remember, we don't blip from one world or environment to another. It's amusing in films, or even there, often it's disconcerting to start with, but it's not normal. So we can create speaker profiles. I've had this one for a while. I've shown it before. I call that an iPhone or a phone speaker emulation. It sounds wonderfully awful. And it also goes into mono. I also have an NS10 profile. Which merely changes the feel to make it vaguely like an NS10-ish sort of speaker. Let's listen to some real music. Here's some I prepared earlier. Real world, as in this is my speakers, this is your speakers. I can create profiles It now stands like a stunning laptop or phone speaker. It now sounds as though it's coming out of a speaker like an NS10. Full range, NS10-ish range. So if I were in headphones, I could say, oh, I've now transformed my studio into being an NS10 studio. Real? My sucky world? Some other room with NS10s. That's all it is. And yes, you can say, oh, but I don't mind paying for them having them do it for me, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, I pay somebody to make meat pies for me because I'm not going to stand there for 4 hours making meat pies to have them for dinner. It's just crazy talk. Because I can go down the supermarket and buy a thing of 4 pies and bring them home, and it's more convenient. So paying for convenience is a reasonable thing, but not understanding what's done is not wise. It means you're not understanding your basics and you're going to use it wrong. So to give you a sense of what I've done here, and I don't think this is exactly the same as what is done in... I'm going to have to rescue these. I don't think this is exactly the same as what is done in these fancier sorts of things, but it doesn't mean that what's done in the fancier sorts of things is actually better. They will try to give the impression that it's actually better, but I don't believe it is. Because I think they use impulse responses, convolution impulse responses. And as I always say, my opinion on convolution responses, on convolution IRs, is that they are the equivalent of putting bunny ears on your Instaham camera. It hasn't turned you into a rabbit. Doesn't matter how many times you put them on there, you haven't turned into a rabbit or Dracula or whatever's fashionable this month on Instaham cameras. So my iPhone is just an EQ that looks like this. I've picked that reasonably at random, but I did look at some EQ plots that people have taken and sort of like, yeah, that seems reasonable enough. And that's what I'm saying, that's what my phone speaker sounds like. Because every phone speaker is going to sound different. Depends how meaty your hand is and whether you're holding it or whether you've put it in the bath or whatever. You know, there's no single one thing, which is the delusion. And the other profile being the NS10, which I did actually download a plot on, or a couple of plots on, and merely set up something which was a bit similar, but then I finessed it to sort of feel right to me. So this is a Benedict S10, a BS10, which is true because it's not a real speaker, but it gives a different profile. Now it is interesting because, well, obviously in this situation I can use that to check, well, is my mix likely to translate to the worst speaker system in the known universe? And yes, if it doesn't translate, as in it's never going to sound the same, but if I can basically still hear and feel the story of the music, then my mix is good. But it is interesting also being able to translate to say, how would it be if I used a different speaker? I just broadly called it an NS10. And it's interesting. So it's a little like having a second speaker on my console. And I do have second speakers and I never turn them on because they're a waste of time. But it is a little interesting. And I did come to think, well, maybe I mix a little too bass heavy because my speakers do reproduce, they feel very solid down low, whereas an NS10 doesn't. So it forces you to lift things, and I've made some videos recently where I show lifting things, putting them into that more listenable range, and that's part of why NS10s and NS10 mixes work so well, because everything's pushed into a listenable range. If it's below about 85 hertz, then it's not really reproduced very well in the speaker, so you find ways to shift the way that instrument speaks up into where it is going to speak, and you get these really lovely mixes. But it doesn't mean you need NS10s. If I had a set, I I assume, run them. I've always liked them. And this idea that they're a horrible speaker, to me, is just stupid. I think they're a beautiful speaker. So there is some small merit, despite the fact that we don't agree with what Bob Katz is saying, there is some small merit in having this. Rather than wasting money on a pile of speakers to put across our front, there's absolutely nothing wrong with building some profiles. Not IRs, because I don't believe they work properly. But we can just get any EQ, and build a couple of different profiles, but only a couple. I don't really use this one much, but it is interesting as a novelty. I do use this one, but I don't need it. You know, the iPhone, I don't need that. But it is handy to check. So that's all these things are doing. They will tell you they've got secret herbs and spices and they're special headphones that they've built that break really easily, apparently. But again, I think they're $15 headphones with $5 software and minus $50,000 goodwill. So you have to work that out for yourself. But basically, they're building Crosstalk, which is taking the signal, a crossed over version of the signal, mixing the two together a little bit. That's your Crosstalk. So that moves the signal a little bit more like this, so they sound a little bit more like you're listening to speakers in front of you than these two weird things coming at you unrelatedly from the side. And then they build speaker profiles. As I said, I think they use IRs because they're very fashionable. And they're a way of seeming to be able to build something quite complex with no effort at all. I could tap something in this room, record it, and say, now you've got a perfect IR of my mixing environment. It's horrifyingly hands down pants, regardless of whether it's my room or Abbey Road or whatever, it's hands down pants. So you can build all of this stuff yourself, assuming it even matters. I did it partly out of interest, and part because I was showing somebody exactly how to get away with making a mix, because they were adamant that their mixes failed on phone speakers. And it's just like, dude, it's inevitable they will, but here I can show you how you can actually make it so that they fundamentally work, so long as you aren't stupid enough to assume they're going to sound literally the same. That's how I ended up building this, and then it was like, oh, well, I've got it, might as well just kind of use it. That's it. That's all you're buying. It's stuff you can do yourself. So they're the ways that it's faked. So is this even a great idea to do any of this stuff? I'm going to go no, for several reasons. One is, we will go back to Bob Katz. He says use one speaker. Get to know it like nothing on earth. Remember, one Masai Mara, one ewe, one tiger, one antelope, one Kilimanjaro rising above the Serengeti. Not you blipping from one part of the universe to another like an insane person, because it's not reality. You have one Masai Mara and one you. So one speaker, and you know that better than anything, and then you listen to your stuff outside or anywhere normal. I will listen to my albums in the car as I'm driving off to pick up the children's from school. I try and get it finished before I get to the girls, because they'll just talk over the top of it. Annoying little creatures. But that's not about me saying I'm referencing. It's just I'm going, does this translate? That's all it is. So the other speakers are not to test my mix. They're to test, does the material translate? Does it actually sound good? Does it feel good? Does it feel like it's achieving the aims that I set out? That all of these things are focusing on technicality over story. Remember, music is painting in sound, and a painter doesn't need to know the chemical constitution of his paints. It can even be a liability. It's just bloody blue, dude. So you apply blue where blue is going to add merit. You don't apply blue where blue is not going to add merit. Yes, over time and experience, you might add blue and purple together to get a slightly different feel, but that only comes with experience from time. So multiple speakers and lots of trickery, it's not really good. While there is some sense of reveal, in swapping my speaker profiles is not as powerful as simply experiencing my music out in the real world. Now remember, translation's about how is it going to go in the real world. Mixing is about setting up something that's going to translate into the real world. And the best analog that you have, you know, those things where you can trace a picture or draw a picture with a pen with a funny little thing and a thing on the other side, and you move your pen here and it moves the pen there so that you can duplicate a drawing. That's an analog. A digital would be that we take a digital copy of it and it's exactly the same. An analog is that we move this and that moves as well. So our loudspeaker setup here is an analog of the real world, and a very, very workable one. We've never come up with anything better, including Quad 5.1, 17.1, Atmos, this, that, and the other. Two-speaker stereo that's the best analog for real-world sound for music that anyone has ever come up with. So we should work with exactly that, because working in a weird world, a world that's broken, that doesn't represent any kind of reality, it only means we're going to end up with weird mixes that don't feel right. Now, some of you will have questions, some of you won't have got this far, some of you have got this far only hoping to find a chink in the armour so you can throw a hand grenade at me. If you throw hand grenades at me, I will either rip you a new one, I'll send it right back, or I'll simply delete your comment, because I'm more than happy to have a discussion. Hey, when you said this, what about that? That's a discussion. But if you're like the dickwad that started all of this off, that just said, oh, how would you know anything about this because you've never tried them? Well, dude, to start with, how do you know I've never tried them? And dude, that's a straw man argument. I decided not to take heroin, not because I've taken heroin, but because I've read enough about Jimmy, Sid, other people who've taken heroin and how it's ended badly for them. I have known people who have taken heroin and that I have never seen them again after they died. So the thing is, I don't need to try a thing when I know that it's fundamentally broken. Just as I don't need to pump a kilo of heroin into myself, because I know that the idea of pumping a kilo of heroin into myself is fundamentally broken. I will be a dead Benedict. There's no point trying it. There's nothing to be achieved by trying it, because the outcome is dead Benedict. Fine, if I want to achieve dead Benedict as an outcome, that might be a way to achieve it. But seeing that's not what I want to achieve, there is no point starting down that road at all. I have done enough research on it, and that research is given a massive leg up by the fact that I know my basics. I'm not making this stuff up. I know it. So I can apply what I know, and therefore it becomes self-evident that these things won't work. I have tried some speaker emulators with, VST, plug in a VST, and it gives you an emulation of an NS10 and a this and a that and the other. And while they're interesting, they don't work any more effectively. They don't provide a better mix platform than what I've done here. So while they're a minor novelty, why would I waste time on them? Because understanding your basics of how the world really works, the basics in mixing is getting good music, but really is an understanding psychoacoustics, which is this, Benedict standing in the middle of the Masai Mara and Tigger and all this kind of stuff. That's your basics. A little bit of stuff about frequency, but you'll work that out if you've got your basics. You put more time into that. I invest more time into basics than I do into fripperies, because fripperies are essentially like taking heroin. All they do is detract from your actual life score. So, yeah, take your time, ask wise questions if you want to ask wise questions. If you think there is value in this, then please either hire me directly to help you with your project, or pop some coins over on my Ko-fi. And I also ask you with videos like this, which are really seriously trying to overcome a massive mistake that many people are struggling with and getting massively upset about and probably wanting to take lots of heroin as a result of. If this is shared around, then it can open a dialogue where people can start to say, you know what, I think there's probably more merit in what this guy is saying than the people who are trying to flog me $15 headphones for $300. All right, get out there, try this stuff, have fun.